What is up, good people of the internet? This is Comics Unmasked, a podcast where people get together, shoot the breeze about comic books. I am Astra, your host for today's interview, and today I am sitting down with Simone Warrick to talk about her series, Dead of Night. Now, Simone, I came across and saw you on a whim talking about not only your series, but talking about some of your professional career, some of what you've done in the industry and stuff like that,
hmm
all stuff we will get to. But Simone, in your words, let us know about your series, Dead of Night.
Ooh, okay, yeah. I'm working on my elevator pitch, but right now it's we have two best
Give us the
friends
raw one.
who
Give us
are
the raw
the
one.
oh god, even rawer. No, Dead of Night follows two ex-best friends who are sort of low-key pining after each other, but they are stuck together on the night of their small town's annual Liberty Night. Which I don't want to spoil for you, but basically lots of havoc happens.
Havoc is wreaked. Havoc is wreaked across town on this Liberty Night.
Oh gosh, yeah. And so yeah, they're forced to kind of figure out their beef if they want to survive the night.
Perfect. So before we even get started, where can people find this comic? I read this personally on Global Comics, which I
Oh,
have
okay,
been
yeah.
loving, and I have been loving their service recently.
Yes, 1000%. Global Compass was my favorite of the. So we did wanted to put it out there for free for anybody who couldn't
Mhm.
afford it. So it's available everywhere you get your comics. Webtoon, it has the first chapter only, but everywhere else, Comic Fury, Global Comics, and Gumroad, you can get digital copies. And Gumroad, you can pay if you'd like to, and you don't really need to. You can also just grab it there as well. And then for physical copies, you can get it on TikTok Shop right now. We're exclusive with them until the new year and also available on Kindle, Amazon.
Ooh, okay, Kindle. So last things last of the little logistics here. As we're recording this, we're up to like issue 9. What
Yeah.
does that upload schedule look like?
So basically how we were doing it was each of the chapters have 10 issues in them, and we were releasing an issue every Friday, starting in Pride Month, and then going all the way up until Halloween. And so once all the issues were out, we did the print copy. We'll do the same thing with volume 2, starting again on Pride Month, releasing digitally all the way until Halloween.
Oh, I love that schedule and I love that Prez incorporated in it. Ooh,
Yeah, you had
okay,
to. You got to do
okay.
that. Yeah.
No, of
Only one I was
course.
trying to squeeze in was Valentine's Day, and I was like, all right, yeah, we got to get that. Can't make it happen.
You do what you can, you do what you can, but that pride is still
Yeah,
a very
exactly.
nice memorial, yes.
100%.
So I need to talk to you about the inspiration for this series because I see a lot of different elements here, but I also
hmm
see a lot of slasher influence. So let me know
Yeah.
what shaped this series.
Yeah. I love, first of all, I love that your language using the word slasher instead of horror because I'm leaning more into that as well. I think
Mm-hmm.
that horror is definitely a little bit more raunchy than this ends up being. This is, yes, it's violent, but it doesn't get too gory by all means. So it is a slasher. It was highly influenced by you know, the greats, but I'll say more recently, the things that kind of pushed me over the edge of like, oh, I got to do this right now. Bottoms, Fear Street.
Oh.
Yeah, like the things that kind of coasted under the radar, but when you know, and the people who the movies were made for showed up for, and we're like, why don't we have more of these? Then of course, obviously, anything like Get Out and them, this is just like my classic go to, but yeah, I think definitely leaned more on the two that I said already.
Okay, yeah, and let's get into a little bit more about your delineation of slasher and horror because that is an
Yeah.
interesting concept, especially if I mean, we everybody talks in length about how horror treats women specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
so what do you feel about that about that difference?
Honestly, what's so funny about it, because like I said, we're exclusively selling on TikTok right now, and I'm self-publishing, so there is no middleman, right? And I get to engage with almost every single person who has a copy, and I'm seeing a lot of women. Obviously, the men are coming out and they're showing out, they're doing their part. Thank you, Jesus. But but yeah, there's a lot of women who are like, ooh, I'm a slasher girly by trade, and I'd love to get like one of these every month of the year, but it's just not happening right now. And for me, it's like, look, we're always going to be in this place where there's a little bit of a disparity even happening. So right now we're recording this in December. I'm thinking a lot about the fact that, and I never really truly thought about this, but almost every Christmas movie that we watch is centered in a very specific point of view that I don't have to say because we all know which point of view that is.
Yes, we
Um,
do. Yes, we do.
and it's almost like when you have this entire market that's built around the lens of, I'm just gonna say, the white male, then
Say
yeah,
it.
of course you have,
We are
yeah,
not
you
shy
got
about
this.
saying it on the show. The white
Okay,
male
great.
gaze.
The gays are just trying to kill me, but the other gays. But yeah, no, it's really frustrating because everything you watch, it's either hypersexualizing not just the woman, but even worse for when it's a black woman. Or this is something that was that came up a lot for me. I don't know. Anybody who has read the comic knows that our main character Ray is a black girl,
Mhm.
and I so badly didn't want her to be like the stereotypical aggressive black woman. But the reality of being in these situations, I'm constantly coming back to this, like, okay, but what's usually done is that the black character is the background character to add a little bit of sass, or that angry and then, dies first, as we all
Mhm.
know. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. You're not going to be in the situation cracking jokes and like and chilling. You don't really get the gray area a lot in this medium. And so yeah, ended up leaning even more into her just not wanting to deal with it. She's blood shy. There's a lot
Right.
of instances of her ending up covered in blood, and that was very particular. I was there for a reason, because it's like we all kind of have to face our demons, and we all culturally handle them in similar ways. So to kind of shy away from her being angry about the situation she was in was disingenuous to it. So we leaned into it, and I feel like what's happening is that the women who are showing up, and the people who, part of the family, who are being able to see themselves, they're seeing themselves and they're like, yeah, that is exactly
Right.
that is exactly how I would be handling myself and how I'd be moving. So yeah, it was just fun. I don't know if I answered your question. That was very
No,
long-winded, but
no,
here we
no.
are.
I mean, that even brings up a good point too, because here I am asking you about women in horror, but I think more
Hmm.
specifically to get into the weeds of it, like you said, this is a black female character, and I see that
Hmm.
Sinners poster on the wall back there. So I do
Yay!
also want to hear your thoughts as a black woman that loves horror, kind of
Hmm.
what you already were talking about, the way that the black body is used in these situations as either kind of the scapegoat or as like the human shield. And for
Hmm.
to have a series that is not only female led but black female led, what
Hmm.
tell me about your thoughts about that, of how important that was for you.
Okay, so let me actually take you back for some context. This story, ironically, was a short story. It was like 4 chapters, that my friend had wrote, and was constantly like beefing her up. I was like, "Oh, this is really great. This would be really great visual," and so we talked about this years ago, like 2021 or 2020 maybe, was when she originally kind of jotted down the idea, and so years later, I just never got it out of my head. I was like, it's such a visual thing. But as she wrote it, the main character was indigenous.
Mm,
And it was something where, we sat down to like kind of break story and develop it out. And I did not want to project anything into a project that, it originated in her mind. But the more I sat with, and the more we talked it out, I was just like, does it feel right for me to have a story that I'm like so gung ho about, and that I
mm-hmm.
feel so passionately about, and then I'm hiding my own representation, I'm burying it in like minor
Mm.
characters. And so this was a really, really rough one for me because I went back and forth because I was like, I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. That's how you get bad characters. But then you think about, again, we go back to Bottoms for a perfect example, something that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think what really works for Bottoms for me as a viewer is I'm sitting in the theater and I'm like, oh yeah, this is completely stupid, right? But but
No,
the
yeah.
I but the reality of it is that, in the early 2000s, you had Superbad, you had, all of these movies that were so stupid. And that was the point, is that you're just having fun, and we should be able to see ourselves having fun just as much, and not in stories that are always about slavery or being,
Mm,
the magic wise man that's
right.
helping the other main characters get through the story. So yeah, I went back and forth on it, but then ultimately, the more that we wrote her, it was organically happening that she was just feeling like she wasn't, like we were kind of stretching it by saying she was indigenous. And then when we came down to actually, bringing on artists and creating a lookbook for it, both of us put in like ideal actresses to use as like a starting point, and both of us led with like four, like we Io was on both of our lists. And so it's just like, you could feel ourselves naturally gravitating to that. Why are we fighting it?
Hmm.
So yeah, so it ended up, I'm super glad that I did actually do it, because I feel like, just to be blunt, if I'd gotten this far in the process, and it's doing, by my standards pretty well, seeing how small it is, I would probably regret it in retrospect, if I didn't, just go with my gut, if I tried to play it safe.
I love that. I love that kind of perspective as an artist and as a creative, of just like going with your
Mhm.
gut and what felt right to you. So that's honestly
Mhm.
amazing to hear. And you talked a little bit about it, but now I want to go into kind of the behind the scenes of making this comic. What does that look like? Kind of like from this idea that you and your friend had to what we are
Yeah.
seeing now, to something that I can access easily on
Yeah.
global comics or what have you and read.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, so the like redevelopment process that we took like 6 months, where we would just meet. We tried to meet like 3 times a week, and for hours. So it would be maybe like we put it on the calendar as like a 1 hour block, and then we'd end up like looking at the calendar and be like 4 hours later, like, oh crap, we gotta
Yep,
eat,
yep.
gotta hydrate.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, so for months of the process, it was just us figuring out, A, what is the actual, like, what is the centerpiece that the whole story is kind of operating off of. And ironically, volume one doesn't even start to touch on the heist, which is the biggest part of the story,
Mm-hmm.
when they not to spoil, but they kind of stumble into the middle of a heist and end up being part of it. And so it was really just a matter of breaking down all of our characters, what their motivations were, how they were, actively part of, something that a ringleader of a heist would need, your getaway driver, your mechanic,
Mm-hmm.
whatever role you need, and how we can infuse that into who they are, or if it's not already there. So just figuring out who each of these girls were. One of our characters non-binary. I need to stop saying girls.
Our crew, our
But
team.
exactly. And so yeah, so figuring out who they all were, and then how to break it up so that there was an actual story in not only each volume, but in each chapter, in each issue, so that it has a complete arc from beginning to end every 5 pages. And I hope you felt that as well, that like each issue is roughly 5 pages, and there would always be a kind of a turning point, and you end up somewhere that was very different from where the issue actually started. And that was intentional, so that you got to have a page turner, a reason to come
Mm-hmm.
back. So just breaking the story was a long process, and then once we finally felt like we had a good enough of the script, a good amount of the script ready, we so I started doing some outreach. My whole point with this project, and I've said this a lot, is I wanted to create opportunity. My friend she was in law school at the time that she was writing this and showing it to me, and she didn't believe that she could be a writer, and I was like, nope, you are
Mhm.
one. You just wrote something, let's make it happen. And I knew a lot of artists because I had just come off of doing this zine to finish a another queer show that got canceled. So this show called The Wilds, we did like a unofficial season 3 in zine form, and so I knew a bunch of those artists who, again, they're like, oh, I'm just, I don't know if I'll ever have a job doing it. And I was very, very blessed at the time. I was fully employed, and I was just like, you know what? I want to be able to give all of the people that I care about and myself a way to kind of represent that we are kind of behind the scenes still doing our thing, even though we all had day jobs. And so I decided to bring on a team of artists instead of doing it ourselves. And it started out with a lot of just cold outreach. I had some in my back pocket from working on the previous project, but there were some that I had always engaged with on Twitter mostly, and I was like, if you're interested in this, here's the brief. And so a lot of them will tell you they got that message from me and they're like, no, this is spam. There's no way it's real because it sounds too good to be true.
Oh, stop,
you're,
stop.
you're gonna pay me to do art? So yeah, I was like, yeah, I would like to do
Yeah,
that.
you're an artist. That's what we do.
Let's try that. So yeah, so we had a team. So I was doing storyboards, and we had a pencilist, and then we had an inker and like a team of colorists. And yeah, we basically, I would put everything in script form, flesh it out, make it final. And then we kind of decided together as a team that it made the most sense to maybe not have more than like five or six beats at most on each page, so that each page was kind of so we can kind of monetize that, like rather than one person is drawing a page that's just a keyframe and one person's drawing a page that's 10 different beats,
Right.
trying to, yeah, exactly, trying to neutralize it a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more spread out. So yeah, every page we kind of landed on, it's either one image or it's in between five or six, and kind of assigned
Hmm.
them per artist. And so then once we'd done that for a few months, we realized it made sense for that's how we ended up with like one person dedicated to each thing. So to make it more streamlined, one person just took all of the pencils, one person took all of the inks, and then yeah, it was running like a full machine. And it did feel like a business. Like we were like, oh, we're doing a real thing here.
Yes,
And
you
it
are. This is absolutely a real thing you're doing. Yes.
well, it was just, yeah, the process was so collaborative because
Hmm.
on any given stage of the process, one of the artists could be like, oh, hey, what about, I like that they did it this way, but what about if we, made this night, or what, they would just change one little tiny element that then would bring the whole page to life. And sometimes we'd go back to pencil and redo something, but we tried to kind of leave that to like the really, really important beats. But it was happening constantly, and it was just like that, the creative juices of being able to work with so many talented people, and everybody's kind of like running on all firing on all cylinders. And it was just yeah, it was probably one of the best, like you said, you know my background, but this was probably one of the best creative projects I've ever had the privilege of working
Wow.
on.
That's
Yeah.
that's high praise, and that's amazing praise actually. And even just what you were saying with like kind of the beats of the narrative, I've been really enjoying the short format, just kind of this very
Hmm.
snappy, punchy, let's go, go, go. I wasn't expecting to
Hmm.
love it so much just because I'm very used to the DC Marvel sit down for 30 pages and you're gonna enjoy
Yes.
it.
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
was a very interesting change of pace, and I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. So it was interesting to hear your thoughts about kind of why that was the case and
Yeah.
why you needed to do it that way. But now talking, you said specifically your background. I guess before we go even into all of that, why a comic book specifically?
Oh, I love this question. So yeah, can I combine the context of like my
Yes,
background with
absolutely. Let us know. Let us know what Simone Warwick does. How did we get in this position?
Right, right. So, I worked in production for a very long time, which means I was like on set, and a good chunk of it I was all over the place. I was sometimes working camera, sometimes doing whatever was available. But then, eventually, I landing in what's called ADing, assistant directing. Feels it sounds like you're the assistant to someone, but in the TV film world, there is the director, which is in charge of all of the creative, and the assistant director, which is in charge of all of the operations. So basically, just like moving all the pieces together to make sure that you facilitated a space for people to create efficiently. And so I did that for a while. I got into the Directors Guild of America training program, and then the pandemic happened.
Mm, yes, it did.
And at the time I was already working on my third surgery on my right knee, and it had just like I had just retorn my ACL, and so I had a lot of thinking to do, like most people did at the time.
Right.
And so I was kind of just like, okay, well, I want to keep doing what I'm doing for sure, but I also let myself kind of slide into being this logistics person when I know that I want to be creative. So how do I get
Mm,
closer to that? So I started to reach out to like showrunners that I had worked together with in the assistant director capacity, and almost all of them. Look, my thing is I hide a lot, and so I'm never the person that's asking for what I actually want.
mm,
I'm always the person that's like, oh, I know what you need and I'll help you get that. And so I was absolutely terrified to my bones about reaching out to anybody. And then I did the first three people, and each of them, even though I hadn't worked with them in years, were like, oh my God, I remember you. Of course I remember you. Yeah, what do you need? Let me know how
mm.
can I help you? And so those three kind of gave me the fire I needed to reach out to like my wider recs, and so yeah, eventually I ended up in a studio at fuck it, I'm just gonna say I worked at Paramount,
Let them know.
and
Get into the nitty fucking gritty here.
and yeah, especially if you're keeping your eye on the news, then Paramount's a very special place to work. And even before this current administration, it was that way. And I think we've been teeing up to what they're doing right now with Ellison for a very long time.
Mm,
And so let's just say it wasn't the most friendly of environments to be in, for me. And yeah, we had a lot of, let me not lead with the negative. The positive part is that the person who hired me, who let me move from the production department over to development,
mhm,
who was the EVP at the time, she was amazing. She was incredible. And she made sure that her team represented the entirety of America. There was every walk of life in our department. And even being a junior exec, being able to, because I moved over and I didn't have to go the assistant route. She moved me over at that middle
oh
level,
wow.
and she didn't have to do that, but she knew that I had already put in my years on the production side, and she saw
Mm,
the value there. And there's not a lot of people who are gonna make a move like that for you. So she stuck her neck out for me, and then she had her ears open. She wasn't the type of boss that was saying, "Oh, only the SVPs can talk in these big meetings." Like anybody could genuinely contribute, and if there was, if they were balking on anything, they would call it out. And if they had read something that maybe not everybody would appreciate, they would still bring it to Jenna, and Jenna was incredible at hearing us all. And so that's the positive part.
but there's more, Simone, that I'm
there
hearing.
seems to be a little bit more. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, look, Jenna again, when I came over, the first thing that I noticed was that we were getting all of our book scouting done from an agency that was not reading everything. And
Mm,
so they were constantly sending us books that were like the top tier of a very specific market for middle America, intended for middle America, and for a specific household.
Right.
You're making more than 500K, or even better, you're making less than 100K, but you're a man. That's the very
Mm,
specific market. And so I noticed this very early on. And I told my direct boss at first, but then he helped me in telling Jenna that I would love to explore other avenues of IP. I wanted to look more into gaming. I wanted to look more into comics and stuff that was posted online. And and so she was like, do it. Do it. Put together a list of what you've scouted and
all
then send
right.
it to the department. And she let me, girl. She let me run. So I had relationships with Oni Press, with Vault, with pretty much all of the bigger comic publishers,
Nice,
and
nice.
yeah, and it was kind of my way back into, oh, I did used to love this when I was younger, and I kind of
Mm,
let this love go. And but all of these stories are still here, and not only are they still here, they're working harder than I would say traditional publishing right now, because it costs even more money. And because people, you have to push to get people in the door, because people are not really cognizant of the comic market anymore. I know this from example. So so yeah, it was very, very fun. And here comes the bad part. So in October, oh yeah, around October, November of 2022, yeah, Jenna and about half of my department were laid off.
mm.
And she was 9 months pregnant at the time. She was about to pop that week, and they laid her
Get
off.
out. Oh my
Everything she gave
gosh.
to this company, it was crazy, crazy work. And yeah, we ended up. You guys, I can't talk too much about this. I'm gonna get crazy, but like it ended up. But let's just say the environment at PDVS changed greatly.
Mm,
um, the distinction between PTVS and P Plus, where I worked, was the independent studio. That meant that we developed shows for Amazon, for Apple, for Disney. We worked for everybody. And then P Plus
because
was just the
sorry to interrupt and don't get me wrong, The
yeah,
Wilds that was on where was that
Amazon.
Amazon, that's right, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a huge, for me, it was really huge. Like, it was a stepping point into my next era, I think,
Mm,
because I was constantly trying to get that show picked up again, try and find someone else that would, because at the time, you guys, you got to remember, this is 2020, 2021, 2022. So Warrior Nun had just got canceled, Paper Girls had just got canceled,
oh my
League of Their
gosh,
Own
that's
canceled,
right.
Wilds canceled. Like, it was nonstop. And for me, you have to be an adult. You have to process these things. This is not like the end of the world. There's a lot of shit happening that's more important than shows getting canceled. But I'm chronically online. And like I said, I'm on Twitter of all the places. So a lot of the people that I'm seeing that are doing petitions, that are putting up billboards to try and save these shows, are young people who
Mm,
need to see themselves. And instead of seeing themselves, what they're seeing is that everybody is saying, no, 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 you're not, you have no value for me. I can keep a gay man show around all day long. But you and your little lesbian shit, that has to
mm.
go. And I just didn't rock with it. So the fact that I kept bringing it up in my meetings was making me look like a crazy person. But at the same time, I'm wondering, how is it that my direct boss is a gay man, and there is another gay person in the office? It's a whole other story there. But it was
Ooh,
just like, you guys are seeing what's happening and you're okay with it. But yes, because you know actual words. I'm not saying this. This is something that one of them said to me. You have to be a cockroach and know when to hide. And that's how you stay.
oh
Yeah.
really? Oh
Yeah. Yeah,
really?
okay. Cool,
Okay.
cool, cool. Yeah, well, I don't cockroach well. I'll tell you what. So it was either be very loud and get myself thrown out of here, or leave. And
Mm.
so I left. And I decided, and this is where, sorry, again, long-winded way to
No,
get back
no,
to your
let us
question.
know.
My my next the next step of my journey was working at a it was not a non-profit, that's wrong, a
Mm.
startup for a kids content company, which ironically got absorbed by Paramount earlier this
Oh
year. So
my goodness.
couldn't escape it, couldn't
Okay.
escape it. But yeah, so I
Woo.
was working with a kids author, creating and developing their digital presence. So I was making their YouTube series, their TikTok, their like Instagram, everything digital. I was managing and sort of leading productions on. And for me, I learned two very important things at that job that I'm so glad with the two experiences combined, and that's how I ended up here. But I would have never touched anything remotely close to digital because
Hmm.
anybody who actually knows me in real life knows that I don't I never had an Instagram, never, like, I did Facebook obviously, but like haven't done it in years, and did not have a TikTok at the time that I started this process. Like, I do not like social media. I don't like what it does to us. But
But here we
but
are.
I understand. Yeah, exactly. But big but I understood the power of it when I got to work in this digital department, because
Hmm.
yeah, all the problems that I have with streaming that we just talked about, which is just the tip of the iceberg,
Right.
really, is why streaming is about to die. Like, anybody
Hmm.
who's paying attention knows that all these mergers are happening, all these acquisitions are happening because none of these studios have money to keep doing this, to keep making stuff the way they have been making it with no return.
Hmm.
So streaming is on its way out, and where are people? People are not, especially this next generation. In our generation, where I mean, we're barely on Netflix. We're using our parents'
Right,
Netflix still.
exactly. And I can't. And I actually can't
Yeah,
because I don't live at my
exactly.
parents' house. Girl, I just had to get a
Period.
Hulu link to have because
Same.
you can't. It's the household share, and it's so asinine.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. And because no one has this money, where the people are, they're on these free apps. They're
Right,
on YouTube. They're
right.
on TikTok. And I'm glad that I learned that lesson early, because some of my counterparts who are still in streaming are not going to learn it until it's way too late.
Mm.
But now I've had that experience of working that and building that channel, and this came from growing that channel to 250K subscribers in like 4 months.
Yes,
Like, this was
ma'am.
a learning process, but one that I tackled and I was so excited to, because it was something new. And on top of that, I'm working with this author who was very adamant that, kids should not feel barriers to their stories. Ironically, again,
Mm.
I will say this, if however far this gets, my bad in advance, but another author that he said stuff that really, we love to pander a little bit, and we gotta sometimes, because that's part of our brand.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the man was still making books for coastal elites.
Mm.
And if you had, again, a household making more than 500K, your kids know this man and his characters. Absolutely. Everyone else that I spoke to, myself included, did not know him from Adam, but he is very, very famous. He is the next Dr. Seuss. But again, only if you can afford him.
Right,
So,
right.
so he's out here talking about barriers, and for me, like, I'm doing my own research for the content that I'm making, and I'm realizing, yeah, he's absolutely right. Kids don't have access to things anymore. Because everything costs money, in the same way that the streamers are costing them $19. They want Libby, they want, or not Libby, they want Audible. If they want
Mm.
anything else that isn't the library, it's gonna cost them some form of monthly fee. And so that is a very incredibly long-winded way of saying that my goal in this project was, to bring the project to where my audience was. My audience is YA, so a little bit like teen plus, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, and they are on TikTok, they're on YouTube, and also, I mean, I'm now coming to this part of my life where I'm just like, we can't let literacy just disappear. And we can't force it in the way that we have been. We can't be like, oh, you don't like to read? Well, read. You got to find something else. And it's I think, another way that graphic novels are. This is, I think, the year that we're going to start to see an uptick. If you're watching the numbers like I am, they're coming back to this because of that, in a small way. I hate to say it, but there is a barrier there for actual reading. And when you give them something visual, when you give them something that they can actually, that's a little bit more light, they show up in a way that is unfortunate for someone who loves books herself.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also like, you need a stepping stone. Like, I would have never started reading myself unless there was an incentive, and there was, for not only in schools, but my sister telling me that I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. And who is she? And who is
Exactly.
she?
Oh my gosh.
Goodness.
So
No,
yeah.
but I do love that point, especially of like kind of like the stepping stone that we see. My work and my soon to be work is in libraries, going for that
Oh, amazing.
MLS. And I know I'm so excited. So excited to start. But it's also one of those things that's the reason I'm doing it, and the big draw for me is kind of teaching kids literacy and like meeting kids where they're at. And I remember the
Mm.
frustration growing up where my teachers didn't really understand why when like given reading assignments and stuff like that, the kids are running to like dork diaries, the kids are running to like diary of a
Yep.
wimpy kid, and they're not
Yep.
understanding. And I love the way you talk about it because you have kind of this best of both worlds in this visual aspect working on these shows, but also of course this writer's aspect, and you having the
Hmm.
decision of like, okay, I'm going to do both, I'm going to combine this. And I want
Yeah,
to talk a little bit
absolutely.
more about your audience specifically, that kind of like YA, maybe like 16 plus
Yeah,
niche.
yeah, yeah.
How important
Hmm.
was it for you to talk to that age range specifically?
I think that that is, for me, I see this, and I've been trying to avoid putting a number on it as well, because I don't like to say that, you're reading below your curve, but I do think this is closer to 13 plus, just because, yes, violence, absolutely, but, I think these kids are way more advanced than we were, and they're seeing
Right.
worse things.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I mean, I just remember myself at that age. Even, I mean, 16, 13, whatever we're calling it. This was the time when not seeing myself fractured my sense of self and
Mm-hmm.
identity.
Mm-hmm.
I was at this time watching Smallville like nobody's business, One Tree Hill, gobbled it up, Veronica Mars. Like
Right.
this was me. And sure, yeah, all of these characters might have had the one black character in the back, and don't even get me started on whether they had a gay character and what happened to them
Right.
if they did.
Exactly.
So for me, like, yeah, I think there is a stigma, especially as an author, of like, oh, you're writing YA, like that's not real, right? But it's like this is where you're meeting someone who needs it the most. Yes, absolutely, adults love. I'm still reading to this
Of
day,
course.
but there are kids out there, and this I'll still say this until the cows come home. Like when I have my kids, hopefully, like they need to be able to see themselves, and if they can't, then we're failing them, and
Hmm.
I'm not in the business of failing. So
Perfectly said, and a theme that we have recurrent on this show all the time. My example of growing up and trying to feel represented. I used Full House because that was as big as a family as mine, way wider than a family of mine though, and I still pretended that John's Neighbors was my
yep,
deal,
yep,
of
yep, yep,
because you got to do what you got to do. So, but
absolutely.
I do want to go back to the point of representation though, because we're talking about your main characters here, not only them being female, we have our main being a black queer woman.
Hmm.
How, I mean, one to one, how important, like we said before, not only how important was that for you to put that in there, but now if we're talking about age range and stuff like that, like kids seeing themselves, how were you thinking of that when writing and creating these characters?
For me, we talked about this a little bit on the live. I this was what was so there was a lot of thought process that went into the placement of the flashbacks, especially with
Mm.
that first one, because if you read the book, the first flashback is 10 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
that's as young as we'll see them. But for me, my fear with putting it there was anybody who just randomly comes across it and opens it is going to think this is, middle, this is for middle grade, this is not for me.
Mm.
And sure, I ultimately put that fear to the side because, well, it sets the story, right? You're seeing not only immediately what type of relationship these girls have, Bailey being able to ride for Ray as hard as she
Right.
wants, even though she's a little button, and how they can fight, but always know what the other one is actually saying, and come back to it together at the end. But also I think being able to see ourselves at multiple points, multiple
Hmm.
stages in our growth to realization, and in especially coming into your own as a Black queer woman, specifically in the South. I was going through this portion of my journey in Florida, and there was a lot of like at one of my schools I had a corporal assigned to me because there was a kid who kept on harassing me and calling me
Goodness.
words that I can't say on this.
Hmm.
And so yeah, like it's still very much a part of we want to say that it's been done and gone for 50 years. I
Hmm.
wasn't young that long ago. So
Exactly.
so being able to see them at the different stages for me just kind of it gave you a peek into how little tiny things can shift, and also major things can shift, but in small bouts of time and sometimes in long bouts of time, and that we aren't just our full self popping out the womb or at 18 even, so just being able to show a little bit of variation for me. This is so stupid, but we talked a lot about just the hair, like just this
That is
idea
not
of
stupid
when
at
you
all,
have
Simone. Please stop it. That is one of the most important I just posted a TikTok the other day talking about where's Diana Prince's big Mediterranean curls because I missed them real bad. Hair is important.
It is, especially culturally. So it's like this idea of whenever you see a Black character in TV, movie, in books, whatever, anything that is visually represented, and then they have the Black character's hair as like they'll cast a mini version of them and then put the same exact hair on the little tiny kid. Is like, no, the
Mm,
the experience of being a Black person is that your hair is changing, if not every couple weeks, then
right,
every like at least every few months. So just being able to play around with the design and show how again she is not fully formed, she's not fully baked, and so she's
right.
constantly trying to redefine who she is outwardly, and that manifests in her hair, and yeah, kind of validating that part of the experience as like a woman of color through the work was pretty cool.
Yeah, and stuff like that absolutely matters because it's one of those things where some kids genuinely don't know at all like what the difference of hair and stuff like that. And when I think of
Mm-hmm.
representation in my childhood, I unironically think of Libby from Jimmy Neutron and how she had yes, she got her hair changed. She got braids, and I was like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
it was one of the first times where I was like, oh, like that my friend does that. Like my friend changes her hair all
Yeah.
the time. So
Yeah.
even you just
Yeah.
talking about like in terms of like that character design showcasing, even with flashback to like the
Mm-hmm.
different changes of hair and stuff like that, that is important. Do not let anybody tell
Yeah.
you otherwise.
It's steadily coming to like bigger screens as well. I feel like they did that on Big Mouth, where someone,
Yes.
I don't know, maybe it was a Black voice actor, but because there's not a lot of Black people involved, we took one person to be like, hey, that's not how that little girl's hair would be, and so they
Right.
changed it in between seasons. Like little things like that. I think, yeah, it's great that we're finally getting there, but it'd be fun if we didn't need that one random Black person to tell us that there was someone
Right.
involved in the creation.
And well, and going back to kind of like this representation, this female representation, kind of we talked a little bit about slasher and horror and
Hmm.
the different inspirations. So how do you? I want to talk about like reclaiming in this
Mm,
genre kind of representation and character because what you and your team are doing here is showing queerness, is showing race, is showing a culture that can be very close-minded and stuff like that. And it's done in this genre of slasher. It's done in this genre
yeah.
of we're not necessarily scary with the horror, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're the adrenaline's pumping. We're scared. Like we are in these
Yeah.
situations. What was
Yeah.
that like for you kind of to wrap all these thoughts here together?
Yeah, that's kind of why I mean I threw in Jordan Peele earlier in the influences.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't really come through because it's not the same it's not the same tone, but it's an influence for me personally because especially in this genre, what we're starting to be able to do
Yes,
with
sir.
with everything that's more recent in the genre, I would say, is we're able to say the real horror isn't some man in a mask,
Hmm.
isn't a weapon, and it definitely isn't a creature.
Yeah, yeah.
It's us,
Mm-hmm.
it's here. It's specifically, it's what happens when you put the other into a box and expect it to blend in.
Mm-hmm.
That is the truest horror that any of us will know. And I think Jordan's work has been instrumental in being able to communicate that in a way that is palatable to the non-other, to so that they can actually ingest it and know, for me, I will never ever be able to get over that first time watching Get Out when he's finally made his way out of the
Mm-hmm.
house, all of the white people are dead, and you're like, it's over. And then you have the siren, and that
Mm-hmm.
siren is when it is probably the best nonverbal communication I have seen in a movie in decades,
Right.
because the fact that all of our stomachs could drop no matter what color you are,
Mm-hmm.
you know that siren is like, oh fuck, he might die after all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse my language, but
No, no, no,
but
no, it's
but that
true. Regardless of what
that's the
race you are
point.
watching, it's just like, oh fuck, like
Hmm.
gosh.
You finally get it, and no one had to say anything explicitly. No one had to say, oh well, now the cops might shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
You're just thinking to yourself, oh, I get it. And that is the
How
point.
could he
That's why we make
possibly
the
get
art.
out of this situation? Mentality.
Uh-huh. Absolutely covered in blood with three dead people in the house. Like, this is like it's cinema at its peak. And for me, it's like, obviously I don't think that we're doing anything quite as serious as Jordan Peele's Get Out. But at the same time, I do think that there is a little bit of power in us being able, like, for me, to craft the world that is absolutely not based on anything real
Right,
whatsoever.
right. This would never
And
occur ever in our
no,
reality.
no, no, no. But yeah, that was part of, in redeveloping the story. This was not the setting whatsoever of her story initially. But yeah, what we ended up with was, so New Texas, the where the kids live, is an offshoot of the U.S., which formed after this landmark presidential election. The results came out, and the South was not happy, so they decided to secede from the Union and form their own place. And so
Wow.
it's,
Texas wanting to be its
I
own
hate,
country? I can't believe this.
exactly, yeah, uh-huh. And so look, I'm never saying the words, it's the worst of the worst, but I'm never saying the words.
No, of course, of
just
course.
and so just forming everything that goes into this and like where these kids have been raised, like
Hmm.
there are little moments, little beats where you're seeing drones kind of watching them in the background. That's gonna
Right.
play in later, but like that is our way of just kind of showing how the scariest thing about this is not the fact that the people are fighting each other. The people are fighting each other because someone has manufactured their
Mm-hmm.
fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the real terror. And I think that that is something that we can all identify with if you
Right.
live in America, or, there's a lot of places where that actually still remains true. So just being able to play with that and still have, an entire cast basically of women of color or people of color, and how they've had to come into their own in a place like this, still remain in some way strong, or steadfast in who they
Hmm.
are, and also quick, smart enough to be able to
Yep.
pull off the heists that they're going to pull off. Then yeah, I think there's a little bit of power in that, and that was really important to kind of pull off. I don't know if we pulled it off, but we tried.
You are pulling it off. Stop, stop. No, it has been such a joy to read this series. And I guess kind of where I want to end us off for the day is the first video that I saw of you was you talking about the rise of AI in the industry that you previously worked at. And even though that you're not in this industry as forefront as you were,
Hmm.
it is still clearly a very, very pressing issue. And I just wanted to talk to
Yeah.
you as a writer, and maybe other writers or creatives that are out there listening, kind of how do you continue to create and do what you do in spite of what is going on with the rise of AI?
Oof. That's an excellent question. Um, Look, it's day by day.
Hmm.
It's incredibly day by day, because even just this past holiday pass, and I got my mom like, so you're gonna keep going, right? And I was just like, I don't know, I got a mortgage to pay.
Yeah.
Oh, but you at a certain point, you just gotta say money doesn't matter, but we just don't live in a state that's conducive to that, right? I was very blessed in being able to spend some time out of the country this year. My wife is working on an animated feature, and they took us to Korea and Australia, and we lived abroad for most of the year, and it was like, I'm so glad I got to see that other people aren't dying in the
Hmm.
streets, that other countries are making a point of taking care of their people, and that it is possible, but currently today it is not exactly possible to live off of what I'm making on this. And so yeah, it is something that I go back and forth. I want to commit to it. And again, this isn't about it, it's never been about me. Like it's also about, can I do this again for other artists? Can
Hmm.
I set us up to be able to do this again? And I want to. The answer is that I'm going to do it every day I wake up, make that choice. It's kind of like being in a marriage. You can never know who a person is going to be in 50 years when you decide to marry
Right.
them. People change, you change,
Hmm.
but it's as simple as waking up every morning and being like, no, I choose you. And so today I woke up and I chose to keep fighting, and I'm gonna do my damnedest to wake up tomorrow and do the same. Because it's not going anywhere, you guys. Even when that bubble pops, it's not going to just disappear.
Hmm.
So yeah, we are in strange times, but it's also given me a lot of hope to see. I've got a lot of people who DM me, "Oh, I just want to I bought a copy, but it's not for me. I'd like you to just offer it as a giveaway," because they see just as much as I do
Oh,
the amount of people in my comments that are like, "Oh, I have to wait until payday. Oh, I can't get it
wow.
because I can't pay
Yeah.
for it." It's insane. It's actually insane. Like I get so frustrated, not because they have to say this, but because they have to say this. Like they
Right.
don't have $12 to spend recreationally. Something is wrong.
Hmm.
Something is very, very wrong. So not only can the artist not pay to live, people can't pay to
Right.
get art.
Right, exactly. And I think like what you were saying
So
earlier of kind of how you brought it upon yourself to make a team, I
yeah.
think
Hmm.
is absolutely so inspirational to creatives out there that it's like, hey, this is a hard thing we're fighting, but it's one of those things that creative people will thrive regardless because we have each
Absolutely.
other. If that,
Absolutely.
in the
Yes.
most wokest way possible.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Yes, yes, absolutely. And I'm very proud to say that almost all the artists that were on this project are now on animated things or at like independent
That's
studios because of
amazing.
their portfolios. So yeah, that's the goal. And I'd love to give you all of their handles so you can pop it up when I say them.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll definitely give them a shout out there just because we say it a lot here on Comics Unmasked, but comics truly is the medium of collaboration. And if you are not willing to collaborate, you just don't have a comic or you don't have a comic of quality. And I know we all know some examples. um,
Yep.
yes. But Simone, what do you want to leave these people with, whether they are young, queer, people of color that are not only interested in creating but are interested in slasher in a genre that maybe doesn't accept them? What do you
Mhm.
want to say?
Oh, that's a tough one as well. Generally speaking, my message is keep reading.
Mm,
They can, they can cut the lights out on us, but they cannot take our imaginations from us. And we have no choice but to tell our stories. For the people who are creative and want to do it themselves, no one can tell a story quite like you. And at the end of the day, when you're gone, your story can only be passed on through you. People can
mm,
say what they thought your story was, but you gotta write that stuff down and put it out in the world because we need it. They will silence the hell out of us, but they cannot
yes,
silence
sir.
all of us. Like it was insane the amount that my account was getting suppressed. And I'm seeing it happen
And
to all of the indie authors that I'm like actively engaging with, but at a certain point they can't do it anymore because too many people are reposting. So
Hmm.
just put your stuff out there in whatever form that is available to you.
Ugh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I am so impressed by not only your portfolio, but what you've been doing. And like I said, the way that you have just gathered this team and supported these creatives. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, we have each other's back in this. So,
Hmm.
guys, you need to read Dead of Night wherever you comfortably get your comic books. Like I was saying earlier, I've been reading it on Global Comics, and I'm updated. I'm so hyped for this series, and it has been such a fun read, and it has been so fun talking to you, Simone. Thank you so much for your time here today.
Thank you, thank you. Great meeting you, and you guys are doing great work. So yeah, keep pushing us, our indie authors.
Yes, listen, we love our indie authors, and you can't just read the big two all the time. And me and my co-host say it all the time, but there are works out there that are not from the big two, and they
Hmm.
sometimes are doing a lot better than
Yeah.
the big two mainline. So keep looking, and of course, we will have all the information about Dead of Night in the description. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Here we have been Comics Unmasked.